Everybody, it's Daren Baker of dbaker Designs coming to you from the Ham Shack. We're on the third phase of this industrial sort of urban table that we're making. Let me show you where we're at and what we've done so far. Now, looking at the table, you can see we've done all this end-to-end grain ply. And let me point out, if you haven't seen the videos leading up to this point, stop this, go back, take a look at it, and see how we got to this point right here. But you can see several of the pieces are laminated. I've taken the plywood edges down all the way with an 80 grit sandpaper. Okay, so it started with the planer, then we did a 40, 60, 80. We're going to do another 80 when I'm done doing what I'm doing here. But let me show you where we're at, starting with the filling. So I'm just using a little bit of this plastic wood or whatever your wood filler is that you like the most. And we're filling these little holes, these little gaps that you'll see like this with a little bit of that. Once that dries, we'll come back to it with the 80 and fill that in. Now, one thing that you want to do is you want to kind of test how deep some of these holes are. Now, you could do that with a key. You could see that that one goes all the way through pretty much. You know, if you've got a stick or something like that, you can take that and see that one also goes all the way through. Several of these go all the way through. So you really got to be careful, really cram that stuff down in there, get it in there good. It only really matters on the top side. Now, this is the top side, but I wanted to put some of the base pieces on here so you could see what we were up to. Once that has been dried and sanded down with an 80 grit, we'll flip this back over and we're going to cut the table. Remember, we talked about doing a boat shape, a curve. So what I've done here, you can see I took an old piece of plywood and I made a template. So what I'm going to do with this, once it's flipped back over, is I'll just screw this right into the back side of the table. And that's why we want to cut it from the back side. And I will use a router to cut the edge out. Now, I will use a jigsaw to start with. Okay? And I'll take the majority of the material out so the router doesn't have to work so hard. It's just taking off a little 1/8 of an inch or something along that lines. But I don't want to use my jigsaw to do the clean edge. And the simple reason being is sometimes that blade will bend one way or go the other way, and it never makes a super clean line. I could never really get a super clean line on it, and I use it all the time. So if you're really great at getting a super clean line, then you can skip the step of using the router and just cut it straight out and then come back and sand it. I want to get an almost completely finished edge. So I would rather spend my time on a thin piece of material making a template and then run the router across that and get that clean edge than doing it on the whole piece, if that makes sense, on the whole 1.25 inch piece. Now, the other thing that we've done, you can see we have finished up all the legs here. We had an issue with one of these where the threading wouldn't go all the way in. I've got all of these dialed in now. So the base is ready to be attached to the bottom of the table as soon as we've cut everything out. Before I do that, though, I also want to, I got a piece of stock here. I'm going to cut this to where it goes across the majority of this table. And the reason I'm doing that, I'm going to attach that to it. That'll help provide additional support. So I'll have 2 to 3 of those, probably like each third if I do 2, or maybe a quarter of the center and another quarter way in. With each of those, just to add that additional support to the table so it doesn't want to wobble. This table is going to be used in an atmosphere where it will be affected by the weather. You know, it's going to get cold in the winter and warm in the summer. So, and the air conditioning or the heat's not always going to be on. So it's going to need to be able to fluctuate. So I want to, instead of having that warp and bow from the weather, I want that to help kind of solidify it and keep it all tacked in and in line. So those are the next steps. We've got about 3 or 4 of those steps to go. We're going to talk about in the next video, we're going to talk about how much time everything took, what I would do differently, and we'll start getting, you'll start seeing some serious progress in where we're at. It'll start to really look like a table instead of a whole bunch of pieces. So stick around, check it out.